Good evening, everyone. I trust you've had a fruitful day. I do not say happy, though I hope it has been happy. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Buddha, the blessed, noble, and fully self-awakened one. So I thought this evening we'd move on to the Majjhima Nikaya, the length of the middle length discourses, to a discourse number 24. Called the Relay of Chariots. Now, the interesting thing about this is that it laid down a schema which was later copied in two works: the Path of Liberation, Vimutti Magga, by Upatissa, which, if I remember rightly, was only in the Chinese and then translated. And the way it's written, people think that Upatissa was in fact fully liberated. But a later book, which is more well known, of course, is the Path of Purification, the Visuddhimagga, which I hold in my hand here. Now, this is more of an encyclopedia if you haven't come across it. It's a great book to dip into, and it's got to be one of the great spiritual manuals of the world, because it contains virtually all the teachings and all the practices that are in Theravada Buddhism, and it's more of a scholastic work. I for one couldn't read it from page 1 to the end, but it's great to dip into. You can download it as a PDF if you're interested. It's got all the exercises. So in this discourse, it's seemingly some monks have come down from the Buddha's own territory, you might say, his own country, the Sakyan country, which, remember, is just on the southern border of present-day Nepal. And at that time, on one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Rajagaha in the bamboo grove, the Squirrel's Sanctuary. Rajagaha is now Rajgir. You can visit. It was the capital of the southern Magadha, and King Bimbisara would have lived there. It's surrounded by a circle of hills, and on one of the hills is Vulture's Peak, which is where most of the Mahayana discourses were given, and some of the Buddha's discourses in the Theravada tradition. And on one hill, there's a really magnificent peace pagoda, all white and shiny. And you can go down and you can visit the hut where, what's his name? Oh dear, it's gone out of my head. Bimbisara's son murdered his father, starved him to death by putting him in that little hut. And you can visit that if you want. And in the middle of Rajgir, it's only a small town now, there's a fountain where people bathe, and there's a yoga center there, a Gandhi yoga center. So if you're ever in that place, you can always pay a little visit. So that's where the Buddha is. He's in this bamboo grove, the Squirrel's Sanctuary. And a number of bhikkhus from his native land, that's how it's put, who has spent the rains there. They've gone there for the rainy season, which is the monsoon season, July, August, September. And they went to the Blessed One and, paying homage, sat down at one side. And the bhikkhu and the Blessed One asked them, bhikkhus, is there anyone in my own country, my own native land, who is esteemed by the bhikkhus there, by the monks and the order, his companions in the holy life? One who has few wishes, and he talks to the bhikkhus of the fewness of wishes. Content in himself, he talks to them about contentment. Secluded himself, he talks about seclusion. Aloof from society, he talks about the benefits of being aloof from society. Energetic in himself, he talks about arousing energy to the order. Attained to virtue himself, he talks about the attainment of virtue. And attaining concentration, he talks about the attainment of concentration. Attained to wisdom, he talks about wisdom. Attained to deliverance, he talks about deliverance. Attained to knowledge and vision of deliverance, he talks about that too. And he is one who advises, informs, instructs, urges, rouses, and encourages his companions in the holy life. And they answer, yes, indeed, there is. There is a venerable Punna Mantani Putta, and he is highly esteemed in his native land. Now, it would seem that this particular monk was ordained by Anya Kondanya, who was the one of his 5 companions when he was, before he became liberated. It was the 5 companions he gave his first talk to, and the first one who got it, the first insight, street entry, was in fact this Kondanya, and he gave him this name, Anya Kondanya, Kondanya, the one who knows. So he must have been up in the Sakyan territory, probably a Sakyan himself, although I can't find that out at the moment. And he ordained this monk, and he became known. He was given a special name by the Buddha. So Kondanya, being the first, was given this nickname, Anya, the one who knows. And to Mantani Putta, he gave the nickname of the most eminent amongst preachers. So he was obviously very good at giving talks. So yes, now at that time, Sariputta is with the Buddha, and he hasn't met him. So this gives you an idea that by now the order is quite large. Senior monks are ordaining monks, not just the Buddha. And in those days, ox carts, no mobiles. How do they communicate? How did you find out where the Buddha was? It was all by hearsay. The venerable one. So they, like, you hear somebody has come out, oh, the Buddha's making his way to the Squirrel's Grove. So everybody says, oh, right, well, we'll go and try and meet him there. So Sariputta was with the Buddha at the time, and he thought to himself, it's great gain for Venerable Puna Mantani. It is great gain for him to have wise companions. And he said, perhaps sometime or other we might meet. Okay, so there is that desire in Sariputta to meet this famous monk from the Sakyan country. It doesn't say that Mantani Putta himself was a Sakyan. He just happened to be in that country when he ordained. So the Blessed One had stayed at Raja long enough, and he set out on stages to Savatthi. So remember, that's just north of present-day Benares. That's where he gave his first talk to the 5 companions. And wandering by stages, he finally arrived there, staying at Jetta's Grove and Antipindika's Park. Now, the Venerable Puna Mantani Putta heard, oh, the Blessed One has arrived at Savatthi and is living there. So somehow the rumor had got, and off he goes, determined to see the Buddha. Wandering by stages, he eventually arrived at Savatthi. And on paying homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One, he sat to one side. The Blessed One instructed, urged, roused, and encouraged him with a talk on the Dhamma. Then the Venerable Puna Mantani Putta, instructed, urged, roused, and encouraged by the Blessed Ones, delighted and rejoiced in the Blessed One's words, rising from his seats, paid homage, keeping to his right, and went to the blind man's grove for a day's abiding, to meditate. Now then a certain bhikkhu went to the Venerable Sariputta and said to him, look, this Puna Mantani Putta that you speak so highly of, he's just had a talk. He's just been talking with the Buddha, with the Blessed One, and he's delighted and all that, and he's gone off and he's sat for a day's abiding at the blind man's grove. So, of course, Venerable Sariputta quickly picked up a mat and followed him and followed close behind the Venerable Punamantaniputta, keeping his head in sight. So he obviously didn't know he was being followed. And so they were both sat abiding for the day in the blind man's grove. And then when it was evening, the Venerable Sariputta rose from meditation, went to the Venerable Punamantaniputta and exchanged greetings with him. And when the courteous and amiable talk was finished, so don't mustn't confuse that with useless talk. And when you meet somebody, there's always that little exchange of how are you, how you're doing, and etc., etc. Especially these days, we don't meet. We've probably forgotten how to do that after this lockdown. So then he begins to talk to this monk as if he himself was a sort of beginner or not so new or fairly immature in the order. So he asks him, he says, is it for the sake of purification of virtue that we live under the Dharma of the Buddha? Is that the purpose of the Buddha's Dharma? Purification of virtue? And he says, no, it's not. Then is it for the sake of the purification of the mind? And I says, no, friend, no, it's not that at all, you see. Is it for the sake of purification of view? He says, no, friend. I'll explain these things, when we've gone through them. Is it for the purification of overcoming doubt that the holy life is lived? He says, no, friend, no. Then is it for the sake of purification of knowledge and vision of what is the path and what is not the path that the holy life is lived? No. Then is it for the sake of purification of knowledge and vision of the way? He says, no, it's not that either. He said, then is it for the sake of purification of knowledge and vision that the life is lived under the blessed ones? He said, no, friend, no. See? It's interesting that he approached him as no friend. There's two ways in which, in the scriptures, the monks talk to each other. One is Bhante, when you are addressing somebody who's older than you in the order, and the other one is Avuso, which is friend, when somebody is your same age in the order, that is. And that means anybody who was ordained 5 years before you and 5 years after you. So the monks you meet who are within that 10-year period, you would have approached as friend, and anybody above you, you would also Bhante, and anybody much younger than you, you would have said Avuso friend, but they would have approached you with the word Bhante. That's just a little aside. So then Sariputta repeats all this by simply saying it all and repeating his reply, no, friend. Okay, so he goes through it all again. So this is one way that you would make something memorable. You would get the whole thing repeated again from a different angle. So he's asked him these questions. He said no. And so Sariputta says, I've asked you this question and you said no. So then he finally comes, for the sake of what then, friend, is the holy life lived under the Blessed One? And here's the answer. It is for the sake of final nibbana without clinging that the holy life is lived under the Blessed One. But now, having stated that, you see, all the questions are asked again, but with a slightly different angle. Is purification of virtue final nibbana without clinging? So are any of these other 6 stages final nibbana without clinging? And of course, there's no. The purification of mind, final nibbana, no. He says purification of view, says no. He says purification of overcoming doubt, no. Purification by knowledge and vision of what is the path and what is not the path, no. Purification of knowledge and vision of the way, no, it's not that either, you see. Then is purification of knowledge nibbana without final nibbana? He says no, friend, you see. So then we get, well, so that now he says, well, none of these early six stages that we've talked about are equivalent to nibbana without clinging. Okay, and so he repeats all that. He repeats that all that, saying that, right? Saying no, this level is not nibbana without clinging. And then there's a nice little sentence here. He says, "But friend, is final nibbana without clinging to be attained without these states?" Okay, so could you get there without going through these stages? There's no, friend. But how, friend, should the meaning of these statements be regarded? So, so then he repeats all that, you see. In other words, you've got to go through these stages. And then he says, if final nibbana without clinging were to be attained without these states, then an ordinary person would have attained final nibbana. For an ordinary person is without these states. Now, an ordinary person is someone who's not instructed in the Dharma. So what he's saying is, if somebody reaches nibbana without any of this, then these teachings wouldn't pertain. But they do pertain. You've got to go through these stages. And then he gives the simile of it, you see. He says, for some wise men understand the meaning of a statement by means of a simile. So there's always this way of doing it as, shall we say, an academic thing. And there's always a more artistic way of expressing the Dharma through some sort of image, through some sort of simile or metaphor. So this is where we get the chariots. Supposing King Pasenadi of Kosala, while living in Savatthi, so that's where they are at the moment. So the local king was Pasenadi, had urgent business to settle in Saketa, and that between Savatthi and Saketa, 7 relay chariots were kept ready for him. Then King Pasenadi of Kosala, leaving Savatthi through the inner palace door, would mount the first chariot, and by means of the first chariot, he would arrive at the second chariot. And then he goes through all the business of arriving with the second chariot, gets to the third, etc., etc. And then he would arrive at the inner palace door of Saketa. Then, when he had come to the inner door, his friends and acquaintances, his kinsmen and relatives would ask him, "Sire, how did you come from Savatthi to the inner palace door of Saketa by means of this relay chariot?" How then should King Pasenadi of Kosala answer in order to answer correctly? And of course, this gives the reciter an opportunity to say all that again. It's just one of those tricks of the ancient way of remembering things. A mnemonic. So then he says, "So friend, the purification of virtue is for the sake of reaching purification of heart, mind." So remember, the word mind in the scriptures is referring to the combination of the heart and the mind, okay? Purification of mind is for reaching the purification of view. Purification of view is for reaching the purification of overcoming doubt. Purification of overcoming doubt is for the sake of reaching purification by knowledge and vision of what is the path and what is not the path. Purification by knowledge and vision of what is the path and what is not the path is for the sake of reaching purification of knowledge and vision of the way. Purification by knowledge and vision of the way is for the sake of reaching purification by knowledge and vision. And purification by knowledge and vision is for the sake of reaching final nibbana without clinging. It is for the sake of final nibbana without clinging that the Blessed One, that the holy life is lived under the Blessed One. And then Venerable Sariputta, so this is the nice little bit where they finally meet. Venerable Sariputta asks him, "What is the Venerable One's name, and how do his companions in the holy life know the Venerable One?" "So my name is Punna, and my companions in the holy life know me as Mantani Putta." Now, what I understand from this is that Punna would have been his ordination name, and that people would recognize him as Mantani Putta, the son of Mantani. I think that probably was the remnants of a matriarchal society where you're known by your mother, Sariputta, you see, son of Sari. And that, I think, is kept in Thailand. It's not kept in Burma or in Sri Lanka, where a monk is known by his ordination name. But in Sri Lanka, they often call you by your lay name as a sort of nickname. So when I was there, I was Prapita, Holy Peter. Well, you know what I mean. So it is wonderful, friend. It is marvelous. Each profound question has been answered point by the Venerable. As a learned disciple who understands the teacher's dispensation correctly. So it is gain for his companions in the holy life, etc., even if it were by carrying the Venerable Punna Mantani Putta upon a cushion on their heads, that his companions of his holy life, of the holy life, would get the opportunity to see and honor him. It would be a great gain for them. And it is a great gain for us, that we have the opportunity to see and honor the Venerable Punna Mantani Putta. Now, when this was said, the Venerable Mantani Putta said to the Venerable Sariputta, what is the Venerable One's own name, and how do his companions in the holy life know him? My name is Upatissa, so that's his ordination name. My companions know me as Sariputta. Oh, you see, now he's suddenly come across Sariputta, so it's a big shock, you see. Indeed, friend, we did not know we were talking to the Venerable Sariputta, the disciple who is like the teacher himself. Calling somebody Satu Kappa is the highest of praise. It means, you're like the Buddha. If we had known that this was Venerable Sariputta, we should not have said so much. It is wonderful, friend. It is marvelous. Each profound question has been posed point by point by the Venerable Sariputta as a learned disciple who understands the teacher's dispensation correctly. It is gain for his companions in the holy life. It is great gain for them that they have the opportunity to see and honor the Venerable Sariputta, even if it were by carrying the Venerable Sariputta about on a cushion on their heads, that his companions in the holy life would get the opportunity to see and honor him. It would be a great gain for them. And it is a great gain for us, that we have the opportunity to see and honor the Venerable Sariputta. This was how the two great beings rejoiced in each other's good words. So I'm going to leave that there, and tomorrow I shall explain to you all these different levels of the path. So a nice little discourse there of two monks meeting and enjoying each other's company. I can only hope you found this little discourse, she was encouraging, and I trust that by your practice you will be liberated from all suffering sooner rather than later. So we can begin our practice.